Okay, we will start basically where we're still on the Nekudas of Tamsis. Third from the bottom, dehinay nodah. The line begins in nodah. But I want to give us a bit of an access, of a key to the union. First principle, which is not an easy thing, but that needs to be recognized. To what extent we understand it is one thing, but recognized. There is an element that's called an inherent truth. You already speak about it saying that the Rambam says there's a motzui rishin. Motzui rishin does not come from anywhere. The most important part of motzui rishin is that he is known to us also without any parameters. It's an inherent truth of our awareness, period. This is, in terms of, when it comes to awareness and to knowledge, this is Chochmah. Anything in Chochmah is relating to what's called an inherent truth. Binah, that already makes, as you said, makes sense of it. Puts it in some kind of a structure. It makes sense, but it makes sense. It's not it is true because it makes sense, not because it's an inherent truth. This is Chochmah and Binah. Binah makes sense because of the inherent truth of Chochmah. Absent the inherent truth of Chochmah, then Binah cannot make sense. If it makes sense, as I point out all the time, it is a non-substantiated truth. It just happens to be. Happens to be is not in from sechel. Sechel means a truth that is based on inherent truth, that is a must be. And that is only that which comes through Chochmah, and then it can go into Binah. The Alte Rebbe says in Tanya clearly, these are the words that he says. Zehu klal b'chol sita de kedusha. This is the klal, this is the rule. In anything that has to do with sita de kedusha, with the side of kedusha, she'enei elo ma she'nimsha miha chochmah, that it is not but that which is drawn from Chochmah. Only Chochmah is the means by which one can have any connection, relationship to kedusha. Now, what's kedusha? Does kedusha mean that I'm holy and I have nothing to do with tumah and I stay above the world? Kedusha means the godly truth. And the godly truth means the truth. The motzui rishin. That which permits the whole idea of the whole principle of being to be. Ultimately, it is rooted in kedusha, which means it is higher than being. So this is the principle of Chochmah and Binah. So therefore, whenever we say Chochmah, the word Chochmah, we're referring to something that has an inherent truth. Not something that's developed and built on the basis of some kind of a logical proof. Now we come to here and we say that there is what's called Hakam beBinah. That seems to be a contradiction in the very reference. Binah means that it has a structure. Where is the element of Chochmah come within the world of
To remain on this call, press 1.
Press 1, who knows? maybe something.
Returning to the conference room.
That's not how it came out. Where is the Inyan of Chochmah? Calm within the Binah. This is, again, a principle that we must begin to understand. There's a world. There's a big world. Big world does not only mean in terms of size, but in terms of variety. Infinite variety. There's a lake, for example, and there's a land around the lake. The land around the lake is pretty well supplied with water and feed, and therefore the land around the lake is pretty rich in vegetation, and the vegetation is pretty healthy and deep green and so forth. So we say, this is an inadvertent development of the fact that this land is around the lake. There is not an element of Chochmah, meaning to say it's not an element of an inherent truth. It didn't have to be, this happened to be in that proximity. So within Binah we can understand why this land is so rich. But is there a Chochmah principle in this? The Chochmah principle in this is rooted in a completely different level of inherent truth. And that is that the world is an intended creation. Nothing in the world, no matter how logical, how fitting the structure it is inadvertent. In other words, nature itself has an inherent truth to it. Not because of nature, but because it was intended to be created that way. There's a godly truth within nature. What's meant a godly truth? And intended, it is created this way. There is an inherent truth in the fact that there is rich land around the lake, because that is part of the creation of the world. Therefore, when we say Hakam Bebina, what does Hakam Bebina means? Recognize the inherent truth that surfaces through Binah. Now this inherent truth that surfaces through Binah is called Chochmah. It's not Binah, even though it makes perfect good sense. But it is not based on the fact that it makes sense. In other words, it is not something that occurred because it makes sense. It occurred because it was intended that way. And then, because it's brought down into the world, and therefore it makes sense. It's made to make sense in order to be Chochmah in Binah, Chochmah in the world. But there is an inherent truth in this. With this principle in mind, and one understands the Binah elements, even though he understands it at the Binah level, but eventually a Chochmah principle surfaces. This Chochmah principle is called Nekudas HaTamtzis. Nekuda means point. Tamtzis means that which comes forth and the result of. Let's focus in on the word on Nekuda.
Result of
The Binah, of the full understanding. Nekuda is a phenomenal thing. On the one hand, it is but one point. But as we know, at least theoretically, that on one point you can suspend an entire reality. If you find, physically speaking, the perfect location of the gravitational center of gravity, you can balance an Empire State Building on a point. Nekudas HaTamtzis in Binah means that in fact, in this entire Binah, as rich as it is, and as varied as it is, there is an inherent truth that flows through its entire structure. This inherent truth is rooted, as the Rebbe says, in Binah shebechochmah. It is actually rooted in Chochmah. In Chochmah itself, it is rooted in Binah shebechochmah. What is this Binah shebechochmah? This is what we said before. Chochmah is not intended to stay concealed in that closed box, in that Nekuda. It is meant to open up and to provide Chochmah to the entire world. This is the Binah shebechochmah. It's providing not Binah, providing Chochmah. But in order to provide Chochmah to the rest of Hishtalshelus, there is the Binah shebechochmah.
That's the Nekuda? That comes as a Nekuda?
Okay, no. That does not come. That comes as the inherent truth. The Nekuda is the Nekuda HaTamtzis. These are the Nekuda, but that's not the Nekuda we're talking about. Chochmah is always a Nekuda. Like we said yesterday, it makes sense. It makes sense is a way and not Chochmah, not pure Chochmah. It don't make sense means makes sense is also Nekuda. Make sense does not mean, oh, I have nothing to refute it with. I have no kashas. Make sense is an insight. It's a nakuda. But it's a nakuda at the level where there are supporting elements in this. And it makes sense in my thought, it makes sense in my mind. Whether it's exactly identical or not, but for the purpose of our discussion, this is, we would call Binah Shebechach. The Nakuda makes sense. This Binah Shebechachma, this is what ultimately is captured in Binah. And in Binah itself, this is the Chochmah Shebebinah. There is in Binah itself, this is this is not Binah. This is what's called this is a nakuda in Binah. Nakuda tamtzis it is called. Essentially, the union. The Yichud can say the union between Chochmah and Binah. The union is, there are two different aspects in the union. There is the union, how does Binah recognize the Chochmah, recognize that there is something to know. This is on the Binah level. But then, ultimately, the Chochmah element surfaces within the Binah itself. This is what's called Nekudas Hamtamtzis. One second. And what does that mean? It surfaces in the Binah itself. It means that ultimately one comes to recognize and to sense that this entire structure that I have identified in Binah is an intended structure. There's a Chochmah element in it. It is not an inadvertent building that I was able to build based on some kind of a logical process.
It conforms to a higher.
It is conformed and it is revealing the higher principle. Its intention is not to be, but to reveal the higher principle. That's in V'nimshach Mibchinas Binah Shebechach. In our terms, it's just to give us we're still not running away from this. Just one could. Avraham Avinu was looking, Yesh bal habayis lebir zu. He wants to know where is the bal habayis. Why is he interested in the bal habayis? The bira is a pretty beautiful structure. Why don't you go and get involved in the bira? It makes sense. Why are you interested in the bal habayis? The reason you're interested in the bal habayis is that after you fully understand the Binah, you see the Binah, that the real nakuda, the real truth, the real intent in this Binah is to reveal the bal habayis, not for its own sake.
Okay, even at the outset though, he could not see that. He went looking. The real intent is to reveal. The outset is
On the outset, you see you have the Binah, you have the beautiful structure. But once you understand the full impact of the structure, you see that what is the deeper sense in it? What is the deeper purpose? What is the deeper meaning in this whole structure? is not the structure, but it's the balabais, is the nakuda. This is Chochmah, because this is like the inherent truth. But this is Chochmah shebedina. It's good nakudas hatamtzis. There's an area called the Thousand Islands. Someplace upstate New York. I was there, and being 1,000 islands. Some islands are worthy of their name as islands. Some are little patches of land. There's a pretty sizable island over there that was privately owned. And this phenomenally wealthy man built a castle on this island, covering the entire length and breadth of this island. A castle. Why was a castle? The castle because he had some woman that he loved, and he built it to provide for her comfort, to provide for her honor, whatever it is. A sprawl of a building, like you say, a private dwelling in the Empire State Building. People running to go see it, I said, this is garbage, I'm not going to go see it. But the idea is this. When you start developing, you lose the point. The principle is, what is the point? Like we say, a home in the Empire, as the Empire State is a home, it's not a home. It provides all kinds of comforts. Don't lose yourself. What is the nakuda and the nakuda tamtzis? What is the chochmah in this? If you followed only the structure, the Binah, it can mislead, it can lead you into, I'm telling you, a huge island covered by a single castle. He never finished it, because before he had the chance to finish it, she died. So he stopped all construction. Now it became a visitor's stupidity.
You said that the purpose of the bira is to show the presence of the king. So the bigger the bira, the bigger the king.
No, it has to be, the bira has to reveal the king, not to reveal itself.
In his mind, maybe he was revealing himself by being such a big
don't
shot.
argue with me. Try to understand what I'm saying. Please. Just try to understand what I'm saying. I'm giving you a hands-on realization. I said many times, if a person would be given the Empire State Building as a personal dwelling, will that be a personal dwelling? Could he relate to it as a home?
I couldn't.
You couldn't? No one could. It's conceivable that one would want to do it, but that's where he lost the nakud.
The saying that the Nakudas HaTamsis shows up after full understanding of Binah. But then previously we talked about how Binah does not take something and create edges. In other words, whatever Binah is Binah is revealing Chochmah on the Binah level. But it sounds like there's sort of an introductory stage, so to speak, before the Nakuda Hatamtis is realized. He is sort of in the world of edges. You know what I mean? And it sounds like...
Right, because the principle of Binah is to provide hasoga. Hasoga means it provides definitive boundaries. And it shows everything that can be identified from it in the Chochmah.
So until the Nakudas Hatamtis is revealed, it's really not a full it's not really complete. I mean, it's not doing what it's supposed to do.
That is correct. And the reason it's correct is that the point within Chochmah itself to provide for this entire spread is in order to reveal the Chochmah, not in order to reveal the spread. There's a truth element, an inherent truth element in the entire spread.
And then what we say with Avram Avinu, and we said with the Rebbe Rashab, that they both kind of rejected the world. Well, Avram Avinu was not interested in the world; he was looking in the Balabas. And then there was a story with the Rebbe Rashab who said that he was intentionally rejecting the world. They were rejecting the element of the world that was not representing the Chochmah. That's in other words, because the world, the final goal is to reveal the Balabas in the world. But I guess the world itself.
But that's a different. Like we said many times. We said it yesterday, but we said many times. Yes, indeed, the chair is supported by the floor, and the floor by the beam, and the beam by the wall, and the wall by the foundation by the earth. But when you say foundation by the earth, it's already a misrepresentation of the truth. The earth is not a supporting means. The earth is the reality. The reason that the foundation is on the earth is because it belongs there, not because the earth has the means to hold it. This is where this whole structure dissipates into the Chochmah, into the truth. And as we said, that once you get to that, you realize that really this entire structure, what is the point of the entire structure? That you should be on the floor, on the beam, on the wall? No. You should be on the earth. That is the point of the whole structure. To provide your presence on the earth in a human, in a controllable manner. But essentially you want to be on the earth. That is what it's all about. Odom Allah Barosi. And this is what we point out. Give him the entire, all this comfort. Shoot him away into space, shoot him away into on Mars. He says, where am I? I don't belong here. But you have all of these things that you participated on before. There's nothing there. Gentlemen, this is it for this morning. So, at last I touched 10% of what I wanted to say. But the point is to understand that there is a truth in the Binah.